Alright, this is the Ducati 2024 Panigale V4. I've got it parked right next to my Streetfighter there, and I just took this out for a pretty lengthy test ride, and I want to report my findings. So firstly, the great positives about this bike is the looks. I think this bike looks so much better than my Streetfighter. My Streetfighter looks great, but in terms of looks, I think this is probably one of the most attractive production bikes ever made. The Ducati Panigale. I love the way this thing looks, just absolutely striking, with the wings and the looks of it. So the great neat things about this bike is just the engine. Compared to my Streetfighter, it's more peppier. The engine is more peppier. It's got slightly more horsepower, and it's slightly more free revving, and it just revs up much quicker than my Streetfighter. My Streetfighter's got more torque at the bottom end. This one's just likes to rev, and it sounds a little bit more louder. The exhaust on this end, just the overall sounds a little bit more louder and more revving than my Streetfighter, and a lot of power on this bike. I had it on sports mode the whole ride, so I didn't leave it on touring, but I had it on sports mode. So the seat is definitely not as comfortable as my Streetfighter. Definitely a rough seat, and much not as comfortable as my seat. I think that Streetfighter seat is probably one of the most comfortable seats I've ever sat on. Compared to this one's very stiff. And the other thing I noted about this bike, which was very surprising, is with the bodywork, I was expecting this to have better protection given it's a full faired bike. My Streetfighter does not have any fairing at all. But what I noted about this bike was that it was very noisy in the cockpit. There was a lot of turbulence in the cockpit, 70 plus, 80 plus miles per hour, significant turbulence, and that was a surprise considering this has a windshield and full fairing. So that was a huge surprise. And the other thing that kind of was pretty a negative was it was 59 degrees, right? And I felt the seat get really hot. So it got really hot in the cockpit. My nuts started to roast, and that was very surprising given they apparently supposed to redid these fins to make better airflow, but it got really hot in the cockpit even at 59 degrees. And I've had no heating issues on my Streetfighter. My Streetfighter has no issues heating at all. Yeah, so the heat was a surprise, and it was definitely much hotter than my Streetfighter, and definitely more turbulent and windy in the cockpit. But other than that, I think it still looks way better than my Streetfighter. If you have the money and you want a really fast sports bike, this is an amazing ride. But in a way, I'm kind of glad I got my Streetfighter, because I think you're getting a similar engine there, the V4 engine. You're getting more comfortable ride, and it looks still pretty good. It does look good. Maybe not as good looking as this, but it still looks fine. And you still get the Ducati experience in the Streetfighter. So over these two, I'd still recommend getting the Streetfighter over the Panigale, given the observations I made. Okay, cheers.